Are we ready?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I appreciate, so I put the order, just, we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanna tell you how cuckoo crazy everything is. And so literally I was working in Leonard's office for like Friday, and then I left there to get my kids to Daytona for sports, right? So I'm in the hotel room, I'm like, well, there's a beach down there, there's all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, I'm in my hotel room, I'm gonna work. This is my mother's so weekend. So, but in doing that, I realized that I had not invited certain people to bargain. So for the good of the order, I wanted to thank Shane, and I want to thank Rusty, and I want to thank Ms. Clemens and Mr. We all met and worked, but in terms of coming today, they rearranged their schedule. So I want to acknowledge when I make a mistake and then thank people, because I think it's important that people, I acknowledge I'm human, and so I wanted to thank you all. We agreed at our first opportunity to sit at the table across from each other that we wanted minutes at least 24 hours prior, so that your side could review them and kind of update and make any changes or whatever. We submitted them. I'm pleased to say more than 24 hours, but you did respond and say that there were no needed changes and you accepted the minutes.
We have reviewed the most recent minutes, we accept them as minutes, and that's a kind of clarifying piece as far as the minutes are concerned. Leonard may be able to help out with this. In terms of minutes, where are minutes housed, posted, how are they shared in other districts? Is it something that's considered a public record on the site or not, or whatever? And just for us to make sure that we kind of have some clarity on it.
Every district, of course, is different. Some care less than others.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody asks, they can have our minutes, or they have to ask and not post it on the website. I have agents who never ever trust our minutes. They take their own. And so they have their own, we have our own, and nobody sees it together. Unless somehow there's a dispute 2 years later, and you're trying to figure out what's in the minutes. And sometimes the minute takers is shorthand, FBI type, like Morse code. I try to take my own so that I know at least what I did not say, because a lot of people say I say things. For a couple years today.
$1 million.
Right. He said what? He guaranteed what? So there is no, Dina will have a file with minutes. And if someone wants a copy of this, they can have it. Just like if the minutes don't go on the board agenda for the board to adopt. But if you would like the minutes at any time, simply send an email. Your members want minutes. They can.
And the only reason why I ask is because there was a request for the 2014-2015 minutes because that's when we did the salary schedule, and we kind of changed the things around in order to take a look at it and make sure that we have a shared understanding, like the minutes from the 2014-2015 bargaining sessions.
I'm looking at you. Who was at the table 2014, 2015 here? I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Was it
you were the president? Clark, me,
okay.
Well,
sorry. Leonard, sorry. And I were not there.
No.
I'm just asking. I thought you meant like last week.
No.
Okay.
I sent you an email last week, but the idea is that in order for us to kind of take a look at where the compression, the bargaining, what the intent was, all that stuff. And we understand fully that you were not there at the table.
Okay.
However, the district does have a responsibility to retain those minutes and be able to provide them. So that's where we're at.
Who else was there?
Dina was there, not in the capacity.
Was Vi Dennis there?
Vi Dennis, I want to say Merrill Wimberly.
Yeah, he was the person, right? Yeah.
Sorry.
Brian was saying.
But
He's always been
Just like from the district.
there may be notes with some people. We'll have to see who has notes.
Sean,
Sean Willett was the person who took notes.
But see,
You're right, because was Sean on that team?
So we have our minutes. I need to make sure that, because we're trying to find out what your minutes are to make sure.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you meant there was no.
Was.
Okay.
we'll see if David Clark should have a file. So I inherit this everywhere I go.
Oh, I understand.
Where there's an X person and we can't find evidence there was any more going
Mhm.
on. So I try to recreate through people's paths.
Frankenstein.
Yeah. Find out what.
You said 2014, 2015. I'm looking at Kim.
I can't hear it, that's why I need to know. Actually, I remember last year. I don't remember.
Okay. I have it down.
All right, we have two proposals, one on Article 7 and one on Article 13, employee evaluations. And we'll pass those to you. And try to explain what's going on with the suggested changes.
And then what I will do for the next session is I've already worked out to see if we can get some more, we can do the big board again and kind of work as we go. So I apologize for that. We kind of got in where we've been.
I think for right now, on the initial pass, perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Just, we don't have a response.
No, I know. To me. And I like this. I like the intimacy of this. So, you ready to fill it out? Hey, Scott, you can get they weren't introduced because you have somebody else here that wasn't.
Yes, of course, be glad. Why don't we start down here and everybody introduce themselves one more time? Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah DeCock. I am the speech language pathologist at Hartsville Elementary School.
Shai Guanter, first grade Springwood Elementary School, District 5 Director, and then more.
Dr. Robin Wood, Monty Middle School, 7th grade teacher, and some other things.
Hi. Hi, I'm Patty Oley from Roberts Elementary. I teach K-5, ESC, and ASC at PPD.
Pamela Weston, high school business ed.
Me, Kim Strelo, 7th grade cop, LCTA repeat.
Here to Patrick, the medical department.
So we're just trying to make sure we round it out. I didn't know.
He said, I'm Scott, but the Patty started talking.
Oh, so I was like, boom, stop. Patty speaks, you listen.
I think your team knows everybody. I know that Mr. Cobb and Dr. Wood. I know Dr. Wood, but I don't know if you know all the people here, Dr. Wood. Okay, so if we could start from Angie in the back. I was gonna say please.
I'm Angie. This is Angie Alford. I'm the instructional supervisor in HR.
Rusty Edwards, principal of Fairview Middle School.
Shannon Seifert, Director for Professional Learning and Community Curriculum Services.
Wallet tonight, professional learning.
Vicki Morrison, project manager for human resources and labor relations. She's our expert in all things technology and keeping our notes and reminding you what to do and not to do.
Oh,
You gotta yell at someone now.
She gets me, she gets me.
No, that's a wedding.
Yeah, right. I'm Dean McAllister, HR and Labor Relations.
I'm Leonard Easton, I'm not the note taker.
I know.
Joe Burgess, principal at Childs High School.
Demetria Clemens, principal at Sealy Elementary.
All right, so, Leonard just offered the 2 articles. Now, we know it's not, these are just some recommended, let's say, draft proposal, blah, and so we know you'll need time to look at it, okay?
Can, at least for the deletions and additions, rationale be given? So
Yes, that's what and so we wanted to go through that. And then, so, yes, we wanted to go through that. The other item for consideration we wanted to make sure is, I know that Scott, for our first opportunity to sit, you had said on things that we know that we're not gonna change, like that are out of our control, we TA'd Articles 4 and 5.
Mhm.
If there are some others, we wanted, like, and you said, oh, I know for a fact, 2020, whatever it is, we also want you to bring those back and we'll do the same. Do you think there'll be any, there are things that are out of our control? So I didn't know if you had already
Right.
looked at some of those things and you said, you would do that, that I'd like you up to do that as well.
Yeah, I think that, for the most part, we've gone through about a third of the contract line by line. But the goal for us right now, as we do so, is also to try to make it an easier read, because there are things that are in multiple articles. And so as we kind of find those things, we're trying to shift them a little bit so that you don't have to look for Article 8 for high school. That's also on Article 7 that deals with class load, all that. So we'll keep that in mind. But
Okay.
Our goal is to try and make it a little bit more, find information a little bit easier about the particular instructional areas.
Okay, and that's not a problem. I just didn't want, I know you said, can we get, things that we're not gonna change? And so I want to make sure I came back to say that. So, yes, we can begin with explanations. Where you want?
All right, first on 701.2, extended workday. Basically, as I understand it, from principals, that when there's a plan, it's developed based on the needs of the school, the needs of the student. How it's done is going to set forth in this article. And if a person cannot do it, principal works with them, they voluntarily work them either out to a different school or not. If a person has a commitment, they can't do it, which is in the language.
So, for example, I know at Sarah's school, when you all were first identified as DA school, your hours went from the traditional 7.5 to 7.54. There were several teachers there, Shane, if you'll remember, that due to personal reasons could not extend their day that way. So we gave them first right refusal to go someplace else. I think you all picked up a couple of those people. Some other schools, it was their choice. We didn't mandate them. We said, will this work? If not, reach out to the principal. We made that happen. Okay. As well as extended day. I think you all ensured that too. If there's teachers that cannot, it's not forced, it's offered based on the needs of the school.
So the deletion of the language, as it kind of just says that LCTA shall provide the proposed plan. So are we saying that because the practice is that a plan will be shared, that we don't need to say that a plan will be shared as soon as possible?
That's my understanding, is that we give teachers the option. It's shared out. This is what we think the need is going to be, or this is going to be the schedule prior to that employees after school. That's my understanding. principals.
So just cutting to the chase, I think it was the key, so if you read the sentence, it's who the plan is shared with. It's not that the plan is shared, it's who the plan is shared with. So if I'm running a school site, I'm not necessarily sitting down with you, Scott, because I've got to operate my building. I'm gonna share it with my teachers who are in my building, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm waiting on LCTA leadership to come into my building to have that discussion. I'm just looking at what's previously written here.
I think the intent of this, if I understand, is that labor relations would share it with LCTA because it would be something that would change working conditions outside or possibly a contract, and that's why that discussion would take place the same way we work through the L300 and the DA schools and things along those lines.
So I think we, go ahead.
But the article is already contemplating this is gonna happen and how it happens, so it's already part of it. And with respect to like a new thing, a D school or something different.
So when we changed or altered mandated based on state, like say for instance, you have to be a 7.5 hour DA or bottom 300 school, there are MOUs that dictate and we do sit down with LCTA to do that. But a traditional extended day schedule, all the schools at secondary for primarily offer that. We don't go over every schedule as it relates to extended day. But if you all want to counter that with naming specific, like bottom 300, DA, et cetera, that is something for consideration. But every secondary, middle, and high school offers extended day. And we don't sit to say to you, Leon is offering extended day. Is that, what we do is, you're right, we do sit down and talk about the bottom 300 schools that are identified going into certain statuses based on performance. So if we want to put that in specifically, we can do that.
So the premise of the deletion is so that school sites can implement that extended day is the primary reason. Individual sites
And they are extended.
Yeah, right.
I set forth in the article.
And I understand what you're saying, but I just want to make clear that anything.
Yeah, because
the work.
which y'all just discussed, there's a separate matter. You're talking about bottom 300 versus other
Yeah.
operating schools, because that kind of gets lost in that. Because then you're thinking it's happening everywhere. We were saying that actually doesn't.
So that's what I'm saying, if you want to counter that, looking at that, naming specific reasons why there's an extended or mandated extended day based on state.
We're good.
Okay.
I just want, I want to.
Yeah.
No, you're okay.
Down, so.
And the next
Okay.
sentence kind of leads into that, right? So you say employees at a school where such extended work is to be implemented shall be provided with written notice, right? If there's some kind of change, then you do have to, this would then be, you guys have a discussion.
And that's what Scott and I, he's talking about. We have talked
And there's
about
a
that.
difference between employees being noticed and LCTA being noticed because the contract resides with LCTA and the county school board. So for continuity purposes, that's why it only goes through labor relations with LCTA.
I think what we need to do is clean up from your perspective, what that looks like. Okay, all right.
And it would be one thing, notice, but then notice that's discussion on part of it, is the impact that could take months. So, and how they do it is in this article. Maybe that's not the issue.
All right. You got another, are you all Scott? Okay. Okay. Number 3, the workday shall include.
Yeah, as I understand it, it's not perfectly done before and after lunch duty. It's just, they can't guarantee that. don't think that's been done.
The way it was shared with us, so if it's, say for instance, if someone's required to go work for someone else, I may not be able to release you before and after your lunch period or that lunch period that you're working, but I can find a different time to do it. And that's what they are.
Are they trying to?
Principals, yes.
Free lunch.
That's what was discussed. The timing of it was our concern. In the contract, it currently says immediately before, immediately after the lunch duties. Sometimes it may be at the end, they let them go, or it flexes some, and that's, we didn't want it to be, it has to be before or after. It may be earlier that day, maybe the morning, but they do find a time to make sure their teachers are.
I understand that, but I
Okay.
think that in terms of the intent before and afterwards, that it's around a lunch time. If the time is provided at 2 o'clock or 7 a.m. or whatever it is, that's not, I guess, is the people are eating in the classroom with their students, or because I mean, go from 7 to 2. I think that's the reason why it said before or after. Provide time for lunch. I'm not saying that it's what's in practice, but
Right.
I think say immediate is teaching.
That is the issue.
Fine. 702. B1, so we could go C. Yellow language services.
We want some feedback from you all. We left it yellow, so we kind of wanted to look at that. Leonard asked, and we're glad that principals are here. It says the district also may require employees to perform additional compensated assignments beyond the work year under the following conditions. Such assignments are incident to implementation of or compliance with state and federal mandates. We wanted to kind of figure out what historical perspective you all have about that, and then we wanted to get your, because we, and even Leonard was like, well, are we required to come after a certain, after the 196 days? Like, is it mandated EOC, like we've been in a pandemic, maybe they're mandating people to come in and do time as a record, as, what do you call it? AP class, exams, like schedules changing. But we don't know of any mandated where we're telling teachers you have to work week, and we wanted to get your input on that.
so for example, we've got 2 elementary schools that are trying to become pre-IB, which is going to change the working conditions, which needs to be negotiated because there's a higher level of expectation, and that happens. So
Okay.
we'll have to talk about that, but there are trainings by those administrators that are asked for Hartsfield and WT1. But what they're being told is there's mandatory trainings over the summer right now that the staff are. So if there's mandatory trainings, then the question is, your contract year is already over. You haven't signed your contract for the next year. You signed an intent that has an out clause that says that you're not guaranteed a position provided that there's a staffing issue. But you also have principles that believe that is a guaranteed position, which we can talk about at a later time. So when it comes down to it, that's a mandated example of one of those things.
Okay.
And I think that's where required, mandated,
Okay.
and need to be defined within the contract in Article 2 of what that means.
And these are elementary schools.
But that doesn't mean that, usually, from what I understand of West High School, it's just kind of like see you during pre-planning, and then pre-planning comes back around, and it's like we have one faculty meeting. I'm just saying, that's what I hear. So but outside of that, it's just a matter of, that's an example you asked.
Okay. So we would appreciate, we left it highlighted because we would appreciate some feedback there from you all. Not that we don't want feedback on the others, but that was the one area where yes, we were like, okay, we want perspective there.
And I think that because this one does talk with compensate or mandatory, that I can take a look at part of that is to the trainings and that when funding is available and all this other stuff that's also have to be addressed with mandatory as far as training is concerned. There's something on the radar as well that's also a working commission we're going to talk about is Saturday school that's taking place now. It's either stipend or hourly. Summer school that's coming up. Stipend or hourly. What are the expectations? Those types of things. Just
Do we already have provision to show on summer school?
Yeah.
look, we're 2014-15. I think there's some.
So 2 years ago, last year, we probably have summer school. 2 years ago, if we had summer school,
There's past practice.
there was a rate of pay.
Yeah.
What was that?
Hourly or stipend.
Mhm.
And that could be in addition to whatever your findings or your presentation on ESSER money. And what that is for, since a lot of the mitigation is due to COVID. Gets implemented.
We can go to 703 in service activities. In A, you look at the last line, we kind of in red, but we no longer do individual professional development plan. So we just took that out. We don't use that terminology. We use, deliberate practice score.
Yeah.
So that's why we took that verbiage out, it's old.
Mhm.
Are you gonna replace it with?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the DPP is deliberate practice plan.
Right.
It's called something else. I need like the code.
Okay. Down on D, no more than 2.5 days of district-wide in service as authorized by the superintendent shall be held on designated planning dates. So what we are proposing here is, of course, with our new, I want to make sure I'm saying the standards correctly, because you cannot make up the new title. I cannot make
I'm just like, that's in English.
the best
That's
standards,
like-
like I cannot of all of them, but
What is it?
what that
That's
entails, they're called the best, what are they, Shane? It's called the best standards.
BEST.
Florida best.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're the bestest.
That's what this-
And they're awesomer than the
That's
last one.
But are they Florida best? Because if they're not, then they're not.
so if they're changing everything that we've been doing to something new, right? It doesn't make any sense after a pandemic to keep anything normal and then transition into something different when everybody, you know. So with that in mind, there's gonna be new curriculum, new opportunities to figure out. Shari is just waiting to hear what the changes are for her pre-K, like the bestest for Florida. So now this is just a proposal, excluding the years when we change. This is a transition year. So we wanted to make sure that and you all can counter that. You can look at it and make a recommendation, of course. But we just wanted to make sure that on years like now, when we're changing and everyone has to be taught and familiarized, what could that possibly look like? So this is just a proposed, and there's gonna be new texts, new, it's gonna be pulling.
And what I'd like to do is bring your attention to 7.03B, that there's district shall provide required, within 30 days from, February 7th, 2019.
Right.
We'll have to take a look at that, because the issue that always takes place is that because there's work in silos, there are trainings and activities that all happen on the same day, same time. And so, and then what happens is if they're not done the same day, same time, then it's like every day for 5 days. So the thing is, there needs to be a strategic plan that we agree upon that says this is how we're going to be respectful of independent time in the classroom, but also get these things done. And so we'll have something for that kind of ties into this.
Okay. And that was the one thing, and so that's fine. That was the whole premise, especially with, we're trying to get prepared for the best year ever, the best new standards for the worst. So, okay. And so that also goes in 7.05 meetings.
Tale of two schools.
The worst new standards. 7.05 meetings. It says 3 site administrator may require attendance in such meetings up to these limits. That made no sense. That's we crossed through that. Unless we thought there was a word missing there, and maybe historically you all have the word sharing. We couldn't think of what that was, what word could be missing. Up to blank these limits. It was blank in it's blank in actual contract, so we thought maybe you already have a frame of reference. And then and looking at time, if I remember correctly, principals, you all wanted to make sure there's not that much, like from many do middle school, you've all been at the middle school level. We don't require teachers or ask teachers to stay until, Dr. Wood, you can input on this now, till 4 and then go somewhere for 2.5 hours and you're not home till 7 o'clock for training. It's usually happening during the work day, temporary duty, or on a planning day. So we wanted to clean up that in terms of the time it takes place. So you all can look at that.
I feel like there's a lot of language that is to encompass broad stuff that's really honing in on the best standards.
Well, we wanted to make sure the best standards are, but I mean, you all can look at it. We just wanted to make sure that if there's, as we go into this year, now we may have to look at something differently, and maybe that's in small, but we just wanted to make sure that knowing that there's a lot that's going to go on in terms of changing for curriculum, we wanted to make sure that there was areas in which, but I don't know of a time, and you're, Jim, you're in the middle school now. I don't know of any training for you that starts at 4 o'clock and goes to 6:30. That now you may agree to take a class, but I don't know of anything that's mandated by the district that requires you to go 2.5 hours beyond the work day.
CPI.
Okay.
CPI.
CPI. Okay.
Yeah, the P. Okay.
Yeah.
CPI.
Okay.
How long does that take?
Till 7 o'clock. Like the 6 or 7 o'clock. I have
And
to
how
do
often
it
a year? How many times a year, Patty?
once a year.
Okay.
You have to renew every year. So if you are renewing, it's 4 to 7 one time. If it's lapsed, then it's like a whole day thing or a couple days.
Okay. And who has to take the training, Patty?
ESC teachers.
All ESC teachers?
No, not all ESC.
So that's why I wanted to make sure. So
My ABD.
AST, EBD,
okay, so those specialty area, even more
the
specialty.
awesomer areas.
Oh, the best areas.
SLPs also take that training.
SLPs.
I don't know if we're required, but I took it because I work with that population.
So SLPs, EBD. Okay.
ASD.
Your behavior specialist. Your
Yeah,
behavior
behavior
specialist.
specialists.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
forgot about outside. It's 2 vendors, that's one.
Okay. Okay,
So,
great.
And I offer comp time to myself.
Okay,
it's an interesting thing you mentioned that. So Fiddlers is an outside provider. But yet Fiddlers instructional staff are a part of our instructional partner. Just something. to
Because
let
they
you
flow
see.
through us, they flow through.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of schools.
But as a conglomerate of.
But as a conglomerate, vendors is an outside source. Just like being.
I'm clear. All right, 7.06 rules and policies. That last part, it is central location, because we know everything else, technology, like Scott, you're looking up for us really quickly. Like if there's things left out in the, like everybody has access to the technology, so having the actual plan, we thought keeping technology, we're trying to teach people accessing things.
Well, that kind of goes back to, if you remember, I think it was last workshop that I presented, they're not easy to find,
What is?
the policies.
Oh,
Like, whatever the platform is, it's your choice, but good golly.
regardless.
So before we shifted a year and a half ago, they were like right there. Now you gotta like dig.
I know.
You're
You're talking, you're talking about board docs.
Yeah. Okay, so everyone feels the pain.
Right.
Just making sure.
And none of us take the minutes,
And-
right? None of us report.
And nobody made the decision.
Okay.
Back towards you.
Yeah, it resides back in the notes.
Getting Clarksville. That's
Yeah.
That bus is gonna back up all day.
Okay. Okay, 7.07. We didn't put it in red, but it's underlined.
7.06, just go back,
Oh,
like, central
sure.
location, just real quick.
Sure.
Is that also saying like, at site level? That's what I'm thinking, so it's not in a central location?
So this is actually being fair to teachers, because everything is not a central location.
Right.
Okay, so for example, like at my site, if central location is gonna be by the front office, and you making everybody walk 40 miles, and I could just send that sucker on email and make it convenient for you. I mean, I'm just being fair, because a lot of times you got your planning period, and you trying to run around and do stuff, and then I gotta make this walk, long country mile walk. It's just, the encouragement is to make it available, send it out, like you can put that on an email.
Right, but would it be like central location technology wise, like?
You
Oh,
can-
like, yeah,
Yeah,
That's the first sentence.
Yeah.
It's on the website, and then we're gonna notify by the site administrator directly.
You may have something. Everybody's got different buildings, that's why you can't speak for everybody, but if you got the old board, you're sticking it up on the board and it's in one place, that's not us, but I can't speak,
Old school.
right?
Okay.
It just kind of makes it rough for some folks, especially if they've got difficulty walking. I mean, like, that was just one of those who was just kind of looking out, like, and telling our folks, please send it out in multiple ways, and make it, as you just said, make it easier to find.
Maybe in an email, like link to policy.
Yeah.
That's not too hard.
Yeah.
For teachers, it needs to be specific as far as where that location is. You just can't say available to employees, because where is it?
Well,
So
each site has got a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right, so I mean, that was the kind of careful thing. The thing is, just make sure to provide it. There's a fancy way to say that.
Let's say it shall be provided, I mean, so.
It says the website, but what I hear Dr. Wood saying is for her school at Mumford, she wants her administration to say on the website, linked on the front end, click, blah, blah. For Patty's school, Patty's understands, she's been there, Dr. Wood's been in her school, but your principal, Kim McFarland, may say it's located here, here, here. You just want it to be site specific for the school. So when you all count, I think it's in there, but go ahead, Kim.
This is actually referring to the district website. So,
Right, but
that's,
Then
That's the school board's policies and the
They could be
superintendent,
linked
so
to the front, I mean,
that's not there, you know,
So Charles has a policy that he has.
wait, that's totally different.
But
We just, but we make sure, for example, like when it's sent to us, we make sure that we make that available. Like you can, technically you can stick it up on the board, but the thing is, just make it available. Everybody's got a little different way that they work that.
yeah, it is, but I think what Kim is trying to decipher is are we talking about school-related information or district level? Regardless, both of them should be accessible from your school's website, so you have access to them. Your main person who's managing your website can link the district's information to that front page so that teachers know the new policies are updated here, or you can click here to get to. So I think there's two forms of information that should be easily accessible to staff, not just to teachers, because your support staff needs that as well.
That's why continuity of how you share it out, because then the assumption is just like when you're teaching students, you assume that they know what you know. That's not a good place to start. You're always gonna have new staff. Hopefully there, even the ones that are there, just like trying to remember what happened last year, or last week.
Or they switch schools and it's a new way of getting it.
Yeah,
So,
okay. You see that.
all right.
All right, going on to 7.07, we can change that black bold. We should have done red, that's a recommendation, sorry. You see, Kim, in compliance with school policy.
Now, when it comes to the telephone, when you say,
So let me give you an
School
example. Yeah, let me give you an example. Angie, give your example, please.
We have several times where we'll have teachers that will call us to ask us different questions in HR about different things, and you can hear them in the background telling their students, go work on your assignment, go do this. So they're taking their calls to us during their teaching time. So that's what we were giving examples. We get that all the time. They call us all the time, making it during their teaching time. So, and the principals that were in the room were like, yeah, they're doing it during their teaching time, but it happens quite often with us in HR.
Or it could be the teacher still in the room with her kids being supervised during their time. Just a thought.
Yeah, and also during lunch, teachers do sometimes have students in their rooms during lunch for whatever reason as well.
Who then come to talk to each other on the break.
Sit with them is their.
So it might be the exception, not the
Yes.
rule.
I can't see inside the room, all I can see, I hear them saying, I told you, to go work on your assignment or whatever the case may be, we just, we don't know about having them in there during their lunchtime, it could be that, so yes.
so I understand the intent of the language, but it sounds like there's a bigger training issue of communication with staff that might need to be reinforced. It's already known that you shouldn't be doing, that the school board policy applies to everybody, but understand the reason for why it's thought to be needed. But we'll take it into consideration.
Are we waiting for Dina?
We're on G, we made it to it.
She just explained what the,
Okay.
adding that in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
She's here.
well, and mine was, it sounds like more of a side administrator, so this is student contact time, should be on the phone doing
Right.
anything else at that point.
the majority of teachers that reach out to me are calling and saying, be quiet, And I'll say, when you're, like, I'm trying to be respectful, because I think some of them, their urgency is they're worried about something, so they really want to talk to me, right?
Or they didn't get the protected planning time to be able to call you.
No, they know the issue is something's happened. Don't worry. And they want to make sure, so that's what, yeah, okay, okay. So we'll change that to red. All right. Okay, so G.
The next one, the priority, basically, the principal's gonna put as a person for the students. This kind of ties in.
And I know that we met, the other discussion was we give out the intent forms. So it gives a teachers an opportunity to share if they like, you know, especially the ones that we recently, but even there are some principals, we've seen multiple ones that say they have an interest in being department chair, they have an interest in being serving as a, so, or teaching, like Kim, don't you have English and civics certificate?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think when you were assigned, you had an option. Do you want to do civics or, and you made up your mind. So I think that's. Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, so I guess, so
What is,
just on
why,
surface.
why would that be taken out? Right, here.
So room assignments,
So you get it.
it's about room assignments, right? Is that what G?
Yeah, I don't understand assignment. Is that what it is? At your school?
So for us, so no.
It's all
not-
about child.
No, this is it, I worked at 3 levels, so
Yeah.
this is a ridiculous conversation that happens all the time. Look, I also served as a teacher, there were times I was in the workroom and I would hear a conversation go, that's really something to get upset about. For example, we'll have somebody who says, I want that room because it has a sink in it. And there's somebody who's more appropriately placed, them in their class should be in that space, and not just because this was the person who had been there longer. Now, I'm not giving you an example from my place, I'm just saying that happens, when you have 50 different sites, those kind of conversations do happen.
What's the best room?
Yeah.
Like
For
just
example,
like
like for
with
example,
art
like
teacher.
if you got art or you got science, that should go in that room that has a sink, because they have needs that are in that room should go to them, not just the person. I've been here long and I should get that room, you know. And remember, we're going over something that was already in there. This is not something I'm here to defend. I'm just
Right, and I even had someone
I
last
just
year.
understand, I'm just giving you the rationale, that's why we looked at it and went,
Some people like windows.
yes.
Don't we all?
Right.
Staff.
What'd you say?
Staff?
Right, I even had someone this past year complain
Right.
about their location, their room, and they wanted the room that had the office where they could see. So something like my classroom back in the day had a classroom, but my office space I shared with my colleague. I could be in my office, right, and I could still see my class. All classrooms are not set up that way. Some don't have the office where you can see. So I've had people I had someone complain to me this past year that they wanted to switch, since they agreed to stay during COVID, they wanted to make someone else with their room. So they could go in that space to have the office, they could really work out of that office and teach their
Oh, no.
kids.
So this isn't in relation to like floating teachers, right? Because I'm reading that as someone that hasn't constantly had an assigned space, meaning they were a floating teacher for either the year before or previous years, then they should be given the priority to a room.
Right.
Sure, that's a site manager's, right, you should have a place in the land, but I'm just.
There's multiple meanings to this.
Yes.
So that's what we have to clean up. But what I heard Mr. Burgess say, I totally get it. Yeah, I would not make a science teacher or lack of a food.
Yeah.
I mean, and not have a sink.
Yes.
Oh, the school there, I mean,
I don't care about closets.
Hopefully there's more than one seat.
Oh, I think so.
We'll work with it.
We're trying. So, yeah, so there are some people like who call us to complain that they felt like somebody got the room before they could have it.
Right.
So help us with that.
Sarah, go ahead.
That's just something I would like to add to this discussion about room assignments and work areas. Some like SLPs, OTs, PTs, school psychologists, social workers, have a really hard time actually having a room to work sometimes. I'm lucky I have lots of rooms to choose from. People accommodate me, admin and teachers. Not everybody is in that situation. So when we're having discussions and thinking about room assignments and work areas, that may be an important consideration, something to keep in mind in terms of just general working conditions for those service providers, but also for better student success too. If we can have facilities that better support a learning space for what their needs are, I think that would be helpful for those service providers and also for the students.
Okay. That's good. Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah, I was excited.
That's good feedback. And it is site-based. It just, what I think I hear her saying is just making sure that principals are keeping in mind, or administrators, that because you offer these additional services, that there's a space, if there's a safe space where you can consistently work with the student, as opposed to, everybody's here today, you gotta work in the cafeteria. Everybody's here today, you gotta work in.
We get an email from Captain Shields at the beginning of the year to remind all the administrators to make sure there's a workspace provided. But if not, I know there's probably some people that's not being provided. It should be, I don't.
Yeah, that's not at my school. I did an interview at a different school at Van County before I started Hartsfield Elementary School though. At that school, the SLP would have had a portable that was detached from the building with like an uncovered walkway that made me uncomfortable for like Florida stormy season and everything.
Yeah.
And you can't transition some ESE students that far ever, and certainly not in a rainstorm or anything like that, depending on the student's needs. And that SLP was working apparently just in like a corner of a conference room in the library, sometimes in this corner space. So, and that was just a few years ago. So.
Okay. So noted.
That's what Pam said. It's when an assignment, making an assignment for vacant, constant vacant. It's saying no one's in the room,
Well, new.
right?
No,
Constant
Leave that
assignment.
period.
could be the end of the year vacant. That is constantly assigned work here. It is, we're like.
It is.
Yeah,
It's very short-lived.
That's why I said this word.
Yeah, it needs to be reworded, so, yeah.
Yeah, because we don't want to leave a reading coach that has to keep floating year
Oh,
after year after year, you know, kind of thing out there. Yeah. She's fun, yes.
She's the best area, she's the best area possible.
The best of the best.
The best, the best.
That's not gonna get
It
it.
isn't hard to
So G's up for rewriting.
Yes, oh gosh, all of this
Right.
is. Yeah.
Use that
You
anew,
just have reworded.
reworded, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we accept all counters.
We'll figure that out. Best counters.
I heard only yes, all kinds. All.
So we can end the negotiation right here. Sign up, all captures.
We won't agree with it, but we accept it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, did we do 7.04 number 2, or did I miss?
7.04, which one did I?
Competency stories, we had annual crossed out, and then whichever comes first. Did we just?
Oh, okay, sorry, thank you. That's, if we go back up. Sorry, it wasn't in red, thank you, Dr. Flynn. All unused computer time will lapse at the end of the employee contract year or upon the resignation of the employee, whichever comes first. So if an employee resigns, relocates, or is terminated for cause, etc. But this, and when you have to speak to this, the compensatory time, Dr. Wood, that's being entered into the system based on our agreement from the comp time, that compensatory time is in the system and will roll over. What this is referencing is
A little black book.
We'll have to reword now that we have our
yeah,
kind of bank of content carry
Yeah.
have this content page.
Yeah. From the little black book to the official book to the, yeah. So we'll look at that too, but, I guess what we were trying to avoid is someone saying, and I know we talked about it several times.
This looked like translation language.
Yeah,
Or completely any language. The or resignation makes me believe at the end of the employee's contract, that said if they're over and now or raise the whole resign. So you can't reconcile those parts of the sentence, so I don't know what.
We'll have
sure.
Clarify.
We accept all comments.
I heard tentatively.
No. Thanks, Dr. Wood, for acknowledging that. If we could go to 7.09. I did not do this, but Mr. Knight, I'm gonna just full disclosure, asked us to consider.
Oh, wait.
Schedule C. Oh, sorry, LCTA may request a meeting, yes, so thank you, Charlotte. And LCTA may request a meeting with site district representatives under the provisions of 2.2 if significant safety or health issues at a site have not been addressed to the satisfaction of employees with their reasonable time.
So when it says LCTA may request, that means the request can be made, but then not be accepted? Because may schedule, if it's a health and safety, that would mean that it would actually happen.
Well, and it may not be necessary, because you may have wrong information that may be solved or but you can't schedule on his calendar anyway. Probably, it's probably worse than mine.
You request, what you always do, and we always do.
Well,
Yeah,
but we understand that this is not about us here.
right,
This is about the people that follow, for the other folks that.
people after 2014.
After 2014, these are like all the things that are in practice and stuff,
Yeah.
in practice, but if it's not in the contract, that doesn't mean that it's gonna happen.
But I
And
think,
if it
yeah,
works now, then we just codify it and make sure that it works. That's
but I think our way of work, full disclosure is that we always set a time and I'll call you and say, can you do this, can you do this, can you? I think that is us working to schedule together. So if you wanna offer account
I don't even know how it would work, like you would schedule it.
for a district administrator to meet with,
Well, the thing is, it says significant safety and health issues. It's not like, well, the sidewalk's a little off here. Like, I mean, I think this is, we got a widowmaker hanging up from the tree kind of thing. There has to be something where someone, it has to be significant.
okay. Well, make your count. Thank you. All right, 7.09. It's not in red, but Mr. Knight would like us to consider everyone in observations of an employee's classified persons other than the school or district personnel shall be allowed only after consent. So that would district. So like say, for instance, you're speaking what of Mr. Wallace?
Sometimes for professional development reasons, someone may come in and support a teacher.
But you want them to get permission to do that. He's looking out for them. You can't come in as a district developer without the teacher.
Yes. Which article are we looking at?
Oh, sorry, 7.09.
Yes, I see it, now I see the highlighted tree.
Oh, no, go up. We want to add it. I'm sorry. He asked us to add it.
That's exactly what it is. He's wanting us to add this.
I know, I just need it underlined or to be shown what's in language.
Persons.
Oh, is the person that's doing it?
Right.
So unauthorized, okay, so right here where it says, right here. So starting with the sentence, it says observations of an employee's classified persons other than school personnel shall be allowed. He wants to do school and district personnel or district or school personnel shall be allowed only after consent. He wants to insert district for consideration.
The school slash my son.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be. And that was not underlined or in red or,
Or
yeah,
so, but just observations of an employees class by persons other than school and or district personnel.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Shall be.
Now, the whole period thing is our error, Scott. I don't think the period was,
Oh, no, it's just highlighted.
yeah, I don't,
It was for me because there was not a period there.
okay.
I wanted to make sure there was one there.
So I'm underlining.
We're able to create that period.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Okay. 7.13, we just got a lot of comedy going on, but we're almost to the end of 7. So I would like Ms. Clemens, if you speak to this, I thought you spoke to it when we met. All the principals, please. So, one degree thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just so we can fix
A
it.
student.
I caught it before you.
It's not an A, it just says A students. Part of that.
I think
We don't-
7.13, we just, those are things that we just meant. Like,
And we don't
have
have
no
formal.
choice.
And we don't have a formal inclusion model here.
Not, but
Well,
students, I can't say
I
for
can-
every school, but.
Well, I can say that students are placed in mainstream classrooms and the teacher would probably needs additional.
But we thought that was,
But
look
the
at Patty,
IEP
yeah.
The IEP will drive that. The IEP should drive the service.
Oh, but the instruction for the regular teacher needs assess students to be provide training to determine and provide training needs employees assigned to teach that inclusion model.
But look at 7.14, Patty, that's how we read, because we think 7.14 addresses that.
Look at it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
From an ESE perspective, 7.14 is really interesting to me, in terms of preparation for IEPs. I know we have the new comp time in the MOU in terms of accommodations, for preparing IEPs. But before that MOU existed, there was no accommodation taking place on my end for the preparation of any IEP paperwork. And we were expected, if we were getting it all done, the unspoken expectation is that we're working off the clock to get it done. So that language is really interesting to me, that was in the contract to begin with, when that definitely was not happening.
Ms. McAllister, I really feel like that's a side issue.
That's a side.
Yeah.
that's a side issue.
Yeah.
I'm with
We
you.
can't
I agree with
generalize.
you.
Yeah.
I know, so from other SLPs I've spoken to, because, I mean, this will get into a discussion about caseload and workload demands. The workload is such, it is too much for us to complete in our contracted hours. And so I know I'm not alone in that SLPs and other service providers are constantly doing paperwork outside of our contracted hours, along with many other ESC teachers too, that are not service providers, so resource run teachers, PE teachers, et cetera.
That's fine.
So,
Not disagreeing with you, just saying over 50 sites, that's a,
yeah,
the
that's fine.
site managers need to handle
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think it is important to note too that it does vary so much site by site too.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
And we understand that we're constantly fighting that idea of site-based, centralized, there's some, yeah, I mean, it's like a 4-letter word,
What'd you say?
continuity or centralized. But, but we understand that, and that's why we deal with it usually as a case-by-case basis.
They do call. They have all of my numbers. Okay, so, 7.15, there's, whenever possible, individualized education plan meetings should not be scheduled during the student contact time. Then it goes on pre-planning and post-planning. I don't know, that would seem like it's out of place, that sentence at the top. Maybe that should have been the continuation. I think it's a continuation of 7.14, but 7.15 should be the pre-planning. I think it's an error.
I have us in the original contract, I have 7.16 as labeled as the pre-planning and post-planning.
Oh, okay, so we'll look at that too, thanks. But to change that to commence 7 working days when funding is available. We added that, but it's in black. You see that we crossed out the 5
Yes.
and put 7 days. And then in yellow, our recommendation. So we shall not exceed the 12 hours per 20 week. And then, of course, our famous bestest standards language.
So I guess the question of the 7 days when funding is available, there's no additional funding for that extra 2 days. It's just a play on the seat hours of students. So it's not really a funding issue for 7 days.
I don't understand.
Meaning that the what had happened on the calendar was there was the thought that it had to be student seat time for 180 days. But it's not about the number of days, it's the number of seat hours for students. And so you're able to still reach this statutory requirement of seat time within 176 or something coming up now, or 178. And that's where the extra 2 days come from. So it's not additional funding that's getting you 2 days, it's just
The scheduling.
scheduling.
Scheduling and when you were allowed to start school.
But then also too, we're gonna pay those teachers additionally.
But they would have been paid.
Without students. I know, but there's no students. Oh, I see what you're saying. So
It's
you're
still
saying
part of
skeleton.
the
Okay,
196.
okay. We'll go ahead and make the counter. We accept them.
Yeah, the biggest issue was on our end, because it's half credits.
Yeah.
You have to have enough seat time. Yeah, we actually got hit as a district, I wanna say, was it 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And we had to, matter of fact, we had to shorten our lunch times to meet that requirement. That was one of the adjustments we had to make, because seniors were leaving early.
Well, we know our
And that's what-
entire calendar is run by the senior schedule.
Of course.
And so when it
Yes.
comes down to doing what's best for students, we don't really allow one grade level to dictate.
I'm
everything.
telling you.
Well, they're all gonna be seniors one day.
Yeah, let's be positive. We're trying to get them all to see.
We got the magna cum laudes and all that. It's
Right.
It's about the thank you, Lord.
How many of you,
It's about
right,
the thank you, Lord.
right.
They take everything to get them out. You got to pray and bless them. You know,
Okay, so and I think,
So is there a cap on this?
Oh,
It
yes.
says shall not exceed 12 total hours.
yeah, we worked on that. We labored on that.
Excluding state standards, so
Well, let me tell you what
it
happened,
could
Doctor.
be 15 hours or.
No, I really don't think it would be, but we just want to make sure I mean, you all can take that into consideration. The issue that presents itself is what was shared with us when Scott, and I think Ken, I don't think you were in, but I think originally Scott, help me remember,
They were
You and Shari.
elementary schools that were,
elementary is a different being,
I
that
don't-
we're having
that had-
professional development.
that had.
Look how she looking.
No.
She, you know, she's elementary, she's playground.
I didn't say feeling. But there were elementary
Are you
schools
taking much trouble?
where there
Except
was
silly.
a plan, except Celia, of course.
Right.
That had, from the day that the teachers arrived, there was a meeting that was taking place all the way to the point in time before the child showed up for orientation.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was more because it was Title I, sometimes it was more because we're implementing something new.
Yeah,
It was
but
just-
we worked and really went back and forth, but it was
That's where it
sorry,
was.
that's where we have it. But all we did was, we wanted to make sure not to exceed, because we talked to all the principals and none of them feel like any of their meetings need to exceed anything to that magnitude. And that
So,
is,
So then there's no reason for the language.
Yeah.
okay, well, you all can counter that.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
If.
I just don't, yeah. Okay. All right.
Isn't every year we're accepting new state standards or new instructional materials, new state requirements? Yes, every year. Something
You
new.
should get new instructional material, but it wouldn't be district wide.
Yeah,
Like next-
no, it's not every
Like
year.
the next adoption will be just the LA teachers. Now, for elementary, it's all. That's not district
district-wide. I mean, it's district-wide for elementary and
Right.
LA, but the math teacher doesn't have to. do it.
Yeah. So everyone,
But the ESC teacher has to do everything.
Absolutely.
because you're the best.
The best is,
And the elementary.
just point it out there every time.
So with our elementary, thinking in terms of our elementary school teachers, are they gonna be busy with new standards this entire 7 days?
No.
We're gonna have time.
Not at CU.
Exactly. Say your comment again.
The elementary school teachers, because there's gonna be new standards and new implementation of things, are they going to be 7 day, I'm looking at changes, 7 days of training and not have any time to plan in a classroom?
I mean, Shay, you can answer, but I would say no, and the only reason I would say no now is because we've already
We've
started.
already started with test training.
Yeah,
That was the reason we started.
We started early, so we're just working on it now.
The thing is that by statute, statutorily, we are required to train teachers on new standards, okay? Now, how that happens can be up to the district, it can be up to the teacher.
We're doing
They
it
can take
online.
our best, they can take our best training, they can take our best training from somewhere else, but they have to know those standards in order to teach them. We're required to do that. The reason that we did develop what we did is so that we could say, we know that these teachers have taken this.
And I know a lot of CLE teachers have, myself included, and Mr. Cloud, my assistant principal, we've already completed 2 courses that were offered by the district inside of campus. And I would think across the district, that's happening. I think we have until June 10th, we have until June something to complete.
And we're offering them multiple times.
On
so
one
that they can do it when they-
Actually, on my day off. So
Yeah,
Sam,
I'm kind of the whole thing with it.
what now?
We had issues with, it being mandated and required trainings offered without compensation and without, on their own time, on their own. And I know it's through campus, you're making it very easy for you to do it at home, whatever, but again, it's infringing on
But
teachers' time.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, but I just want to be clear that, and I want to make sure from the people who work, and I'm looking at Wallace because he's the science developer for the district, and I'm looking at Shane. I want to make sure you're saying to us that teachers can be at school, they could be on their planning time and do it. No one's saying it has to be done after hours. Now, during their planning time, they can do whatever. Some people are organizing enough, they want to do it, they come. I'm just saying there's some flexibility. No one said it had to be done after hours.
Right.
It's out there to be done whenever you choose to do it. And everyone is choosing to do it different.
Understandably, but let's be very clear about how much time is actually provided for planning. This is, and especially when you're in block schedule of secondary, you ain't got the 1 day at best if you're not taking on the extra period, so it's definitely gonna be after hours. And then when you're elementary, you know, there's an IEP, there's an RET, there's something always there. So again, this kind of goes back to understand that the intent is to, you know, to provide the training, to have people ready to go, and that it's very thoughtful in how things are done. It's just that in the implementation, if we realize there isn't time, then what we're asking people to do is to do it for free. And so how do we build it into the day?
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to.
That's what I was,
Because when you're referencing big issue once we're in the school.
Yeah, but we're talking about
and we're
pre-planning
also
with,
with 7 days
Right.
of it, because they did not take it, and I know Silly
But it's taking place now.
very advanced and trying to get their started on it. Are there 7 days gonna be full of, or where they
So,
can't plan?
so I would
No, they
say,
have to be able to
so
plan it.
let me give you my honest discussion, right? So the 3 of us, I mean, we saw that 12 hours and started laughing. I mean, listen, I love my teachers, but I do not want to be stuck with them for 12 hours. No, sir. That can come off wrong, but it's the truth. I want you in your classroom. Now, we know there are administrators who love to hold people hostage. I will make the same reference. I spoke to the district because they hold us hostage for meetings. I'm talking about all day sit down. You know, because he's my liaison to the person who does it to us. Okay? And that's just being truthful. We're sitting here going, you shouldn't need the 12 hours. Now, but we were saying we gotta put some kind of limit on it to tell our folks not to keep you away from your classroom. That's what we were looking at. See what I'm saying?
I agree. I think that the issue though comes when it's a combination of district, school, and state, federal, because the thing that comes up is back to, as a site administrator, I'm only holding them for this much time, but then the district has this additional training, then there's this. And so the thing is, when you add it all up, that's where it starts to get to close.
I'm with you. Look, we're with you. Our objective is to get them back in the classroom. Okay, where you could be most effective and get things ready for students. We were just trying to make sure, we were trying to talk to our colleagues and say, we try to limit it.
Yeah.
I think, sorry, Heather.
Would you agree that taking concentrated amounts of time to go through, but I completed both of the tests. Would you agree that it takes concentrated time and attention in order to take in all this new information? Yes. So trying to do it piecemeal during 45-minute planning periods is not realistic for the record, because there's a lot of reading, there's a video, there's a quiz that you may have to take more than once. And it takes, otherwise we're just saying, let me read the cliff notes and check box, done. And I can say, I took a training. But if we really want quality moving forward in adopting these standards, then we have to give people the time that it's gonna take to take it in, to process it, and then work with their colleagues to understand. You know, I've done it, but I don't feel like I understand something until I get my hands into it and start using it and start having conversations with others. So it's important that we say that a 45-minute planning period is not enough time to really delve into something that took me almost an entire day to get through.
So, Dr. Wood, I know you had something.
I was gonna talk about, I think if we leave the door open with more than 12 hours, if you start adding, the more things you start adding, it seems that, and not intentionally, but that may make an administrator think, well, it says, you know, if it's state standard adoption, then we can do this, and we can do. I just think if we start putting all this, but this you can do, and this you can do, like state standards, you can say state requirements, the more you add to that, the more open door that you're leaving them a little room to abuse those 12 hours.
The catch is, there's X amount of hours you have to have, or you can't teach, right?
Right.
Here.
The thing is, guys, you do what you want. That's actually what we know.
It's not funded.
Right.
It's not funded mandate. It's like Esau, you have to have.
Which,
Yeah.
listen, we were sitting, looking out.
Where?
No, I was just making a point, so we're not battling.
Right,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
No.
So that's what I'm saying.
We take one day, we get Wednesday. We don't put anything else on the other days. It's fine. Okay?
And that's why I said it's a combination of everything, that then it's not looked at in its totality of what we're asking people to do.
Okay.
That's where sometimes it gets a little blurry. It's not to say that anyone is trying to take all the time, it's just.
And we
just
know.
need to be very.
Yeah, because I mean, just for example, we do 2 hours the first day, 2 hours a day before the kids come back, and that is it. I mean, because like, we want the time in the room. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, but again, that's a management issue, and we know that there are other site administrators. Hey, I've been under site administrator where we ended the day at 3:50 and we were still there at 5:50. That's not good. I mean, that's straight up.
Already wearing them out.
Yes. I mean, so
So we can counter.
Thank you, Patty.
Yeah.
You are the
Yeah.
best. Okay, so can we look at the last, especially? I think that's kind of ambiguous. We're not gonna be disrespectful to any adult in front of students. I don't think it should say especially in the presence of students. We're just not going to do that. We respect you all enough to say, hey, we're not gonna embarrass or. But then if there's something that needs to be discussed, we can do it privately. But look at it, counter. Alright. This is Article 13, this is Shane's favorite section. Yes, she has marked. This is Shane's favorite section.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I only got from B down. I didn't get the first part.
Okay.
See on.
Okay, so no.
Okay, well, I passed away my coats now, so I don't have to.
Oh, sorry, here.
Oh, I have an extra.
You have an extra?
You're fine.
Thank
We have some for you.
you. I got one, two, what's that? Pass.
I have an extra.
So,
Thank you, Sharon.
that's the freaking person. Passing out lines, all of that.
Any excuse to stand up for it.
Okay. Okay, so Article 13, employee evaluation, I think the very first and last sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just fix that. And then if we could, potentially, if you all have, of course, if you all have some things you wanna offer in A, B, and C, but D is where we're gonna ask Shane to take over. Okay, go back, okay, we can go back to A.
And what I would change for A, I would leave everything in compliance with the mandates of our statute regarding evaluation and instruction. Personnel performance evaluation shall be used on a combination of, and then I would strike through and say a combination of instructional practice, professional responsibilities, and student performance measures to create, and I would mark through of the overall status, scores, observable, value added, student achievement. And I would just start to create a summative score and leave everything else.
Can you say that one more time, Shane?
I would strike out after combination or after combination of the, I would strike out overall status, score,
Okay,
observable and value added student achievement.
okay,
Because I want to get that value added out.
okay,
Okay. And I would say in their place, instructional practice, professional responsibilities, and student performance measures to create a summative score, which is what we only say.
okay, so you wanna make it in line with leads, okay?
Okay, yeah.
So the only thing is when you send the draft, if you just have that.
Yeah, well, and we all do all this, and resend them together. Okay, okay,
That's the only thing.
okay,
Because that word value added.
yeah, we've got it, okay. It needs to be reflective of what's current, okay. Go ahead, D, my dear.
Okay, D, taking out as a part of the district's new employee orientation and saying to required training for all instructional personnel completed at the beginning of each year and then the employee is hired within the school year. So all that requires instruction, when you take it at the beginning, there's a section in there about the needs, it goes through the percentages. It's not an in-depth training, no, but it is a overview.
And I think that's where, for many of our, and I know we were dealing with COVID, but for many of our first year teachers, whatever the new employee orientation training was lacking. That it left them really not getting much substantive information.
You mean sitting in here for new employer? I'm just trying to
I
make
don't
sure.
know, did they come here for it? I don't know. I don't know what the.
We're working on that,
I
so,
would say that this is not covered in employee orientation.
so that's what I'm trying to figure out, when is it covered?
Because Leon needs is not.
And depending upon who your mentor teacher is, it's a different, like there just needs to be a level.
Okay, so we need to kind of
Yes.
formalize it?
Yeah.
Okay, All right, so noted. Thank you.
The second one, yes, we are doing away with informal, so I think we were at said informal, I don't know. We agree to start to do away with informal.
In turn, for those of you who don't have not, is teacher evaluation review committee. Okay.
3 again, taking out the informal, making it walkthrough, and changing it into a lead schedule of observation. And then just taking out all those consent walkthroughs. Number 6, I just reworded it. Instead, after the formal observation, the administrator and the employee shall schedule the post observation process to discuss. I just wanted to make it clearer.
And to clarify as well, like a pre-conference is not a talk in the middle of a hallway 2 days before the event.
Or the morning of. Well, this one was all about the first conference. It wasn't really talking about the pre-conference.
What did you say? That was a leading question.
Of course.
That was good morning on Thursday.
Okay.
Number 7, I really just took the Leon Leeds information and put it into that. Number 7, so it would be clearer. Saying that the leads, the teacher and administrator shall acknowledge the instructional practice score, which is all of the observations completed for the year and the professional responsibility score before the end of the school year. This annual conference shall take place after the completion of fall observations at any time during the school year other than during post-planning. The problem is that, oh yeah, never mind, because this is the overall. The employee's electronic acknowledgement shall indicate only that the employee has read and the scores is not necessarily. I added that because we had said that one.
Right.
Thing was is that when you said the annual conference, guys, is always going to end up being the next school year. Because you're not going to have that student performance score in there. Okay. Then just trying to use the same language so that we're reading the language that we're all seeing. I just took the word summary of the overall final evaluation results shall be determined. So the overall teacher rating. And then 10, pursuant to leads, the rating and feedback provided through the observation should be used to inform.
Cleaning up.
Just clean it up.
So, side note on this part, just for now. If a teacher is not evaluated in particular domains, for example, domain 3, will it have a statistical change on their final rating?
Yeah, well, what happens, okay, it does, it changes. So there's 3 domains. Okay, one of them is 20%, so the planning piece is 20%, instruction is 60%, and the review is 20%. So if they don't get anything here, there's 25, 75. If they don't get anything in the middle, because there are people that may not necessarily get something in the middle because we have guidance counselors and people like that. Actually, observe instruction, it goes 50-50 with the other two. Okay.
So the percentages change.
So the percentages change if you don't mark something in all 3 categories.
And there are cases where there are teachers that because they're not evaluated in domain 3, but if they were and got an effective, they move from effective to highly effective. So the fact that you can not rate in certain domains, but yet it still has an impact on the final overall rating is one of those things that, for the statistics of it, for the purposes of this conversation, that there may be some discussion or exploration as to how to avoid situations like that.
Everyone should. That's never right.
Well, then we'll talk after.
I appreciate it.
So that may be something that we need to speak to principals. That thing.
Okay, and then going on to the next page.
12, I just added the workbook there. Because once we start talking about her, I want to.
And then Leonard, for number 3 under H. Next page. If you can address that. And 13.02.
Do you want me to give some context as to why that's in there?
Number 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
So the issue that was occurring in primary education where it happened is that there are teachers that did not teach a particular course, but they still had exams that were coming up and they were being pulled from their instructional class to administer a test. Or well, they still had maybe an AP exam coming on or something else that they were supposed to be doing.
Teachers that worked in computer labs were being required to administer tests in computer labs, even though we didn't teach the subject area or any of that pre-Chromebook timeframe. When students needed a physical computer to sit at, computer labs were taken over and our classes were taken away to administer tests.
And so there were instructors that felt that, well, you're taking my instructional time when I'm still going to be assessed later on, or my students will be on a state assessment or something else coming up, that now you're impacting my students.
Well, it's really management, right, of when all hands are on deck for state testing, there's certain types of testing. I mean, I know administrators who are monitoring tests. So I don't know how we work in collaboration. You obviously don't want to interrupt the school. It's probably filling the chicken of the day. It's leaking.
Everything's interrupted. I mean, it's just blown up. I mean, I can just tell you, we've been testing since the beginning of the year. They haven't stopped, and we're testing on Saturdays all year, especially with the BA students. But you know, this to me is one of those, it's a site management thing. We make the schedule with the teachers. Matter of fact, I'll be honest with you, I walk out the room. Us administrators, we look at teachers, and there's a representative from every department because it affects everybody. You've got the history EOC, you got the biology EOC, you got algebra, you got FSA, then you got all the AP tests. You know, I mean, it's just ongoing. And then you still got the retakes. You know, all those things going on. So everybody's got to help out. I mean, you can have, for example, you could say, you know, like a band teacher, right? None of these assessments are mine, but we're all a part of it. Like at some point, you have to help out because in some instances, you can't have that teacher be the person administering that test because it's something to the evaluation of them. And that also occurs in CTE. I forgot about the CTE. That's another one.
We have all the certifications.
Right.
And then the certifications are still continuing, kids are getting pulled.
Right, and the certification, it can't be that teacher, like it can't be them with their students. So then you have to get somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a logistical nightmare. And it's one of the, you know, years ago, you could maybe deliberately say, I'm only gonna have the impact be here. But I can just tell you, it touches everybody now. I mean, like everybody has to help out. And
so let me ask the question. I appreciate that explanation. So what I'm trying to get clarity on is if you're pulled, I'm gonna use you because you're business, right? If you're pulled to administer a test, is instruction for like everything's on hold during the weeks of testing, right? It's like, so I'm saying if you're being pulled to administer a test, where are your students if you're not teaching them?
And it's in the auditorium.
Okay, so you're still giving work or assignments out. You're just not the person who's teaching them that period.
Yeah, I mean, but at that point, if we're doing a mass testing scenario, like everyone's testing, I'm giving assignments, but that assignment that I assign on a Monday or a Tuesday is suddenly taking until the next week after because Johnny's been pulled for testing for the EOC.
Right, so everything is disrupted,
Everything
it's not,
is
okay,
disrupted.
I thought you meant you are required, I'm just using an example, or you're required to stop what you're doing and go help administer tests that have nothing to do with you, but then they're hiring a substitute in their classroom to teach. What you're saying is this happens during a total, the entire school is testing and everybody's schedule's kind of up.
Multiple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, across multiple.
I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
was understanding your perspective.
And so from the teacher's standpoint, something that would be used as an evaluation of their ability to instruct. When you're being pulled, your students are being started by substitutes. It's not with the best of those students, but I understand the logistical issue as well, where the thing is just making sure that there is the collaboration that takes place. And again, if it's already happening, that's why it's in the contract to ensure that it happens from the people that aren't in this room, that it still happens.
So noted, I just think this is a good feedback to your both of you. And then 13.02, Leonard, I know.
I have something to add to that.
Sure.
I'm sorry, before we go on. With teachers getting pulled to help with testing, there's the logistical side of things. Something to just consider as well when SLPs are pulled, which we are, to help with FSA and standardized testing. We do not get substitutes to come in and provide services to our students. So we can't even assign work to be completed or, a lesson to have somebody else give it. We are the only ones who can complete our work, our lessons, our sessions with students. So I think that's something to consider as well. There are maybe some teachers who specialize in certain fields where we do not get substitutes. So if we're not the one doing the work, it's not getting done.
Okay. So noted, thank you, Sarah. Okay, Leonard, 13.02.
Yeah, this is our famous sticker in the book. That it's no longer the law.
Oh, no.
So it's
I don't think this group wasn't out here when the sticker went with it, but.
The sticker wasn't negotiated, so it doesn't.
Oh, come on.
I don't, do you have minutes for that?
I have minutes in my computer from that one. I was present. But that was House Bill 7069, correct, Leonard? Yeah.
basically, we're so glad to have teachers really have work overtime to do something that we just teachers. That's good. So I realize that when they changed the law, there was a fear we're going to get rid of people randomly. Just did not happen for teachers, all teachers in every category.
But we couldn't guarantee.
Right.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to guarantee because 30-something districts tried like we did to guarantee, and the legislature said, you misunderstood, let me tell you again, you're not allowed to do that. So we tried, basically came back and said, you can't do that. That being said, statistically, very hard. Percentage-wise, all teachers. We're willing to teach them more.
And I guess the reason why, Scott, it's like all like, because we have a great chemistry and camaraderie today, but in the actual book itself, we always refer to the sticker, but many of you all have not seen it, right? But the way we were trained is the way Leonard trains, because he's a stickler. Like, for some reason, he's mad about legal things. Like, legally, you cannot do, so.
I wouldn't know why.
I don't either. I can't either. And he can be such a tightwad around, legal things. But because of the House bill, we ended up putting in a sticker to cover this up because we couldn't guarantee. But on the website, there is no sticker, but we reference that a lot. So I wanted to make sure you all who were newer understood what we talked about when we say the sticker.
There's a rich history before, during,
yeah.
So, because it's about renewal and annual contract, question for clarity purposes, when it talks about reduction in force, there's also a part of the contract, when you non-renew someone, it's really a reduction in force that takes place. It says that, that the reduction in force will take place based off of the evaluation scores and not just,
Reduction force is not non-renewal.
so we're not reducing the force.
We're not changing the definition.
There's no definition.
Well, reduction in force is when you're, from my interpretation, old legal person, if you tell me there's a reduction in force, I'm thinking you're saying to me, I'm going to have to cut people.
You're looking at a program area.
Yeah.
Don't you have to cut people based on the staffing plans that are being shared?
No.
So they can stay.
I'm just saying you have to, you don't have to. do it. Okay. So that's kind of like you still be joy if you can't answer that question. Yeah, that's a whole nother. Generic law. It's bad. Not the minutes, I mean. But no, it's not a reduction in force. It's clever, but it's not. But then you never recall, so you never recall for none.
Yeah.
It
That's what
says
the
no.
contract said.
Right, no one's ever done that, ever.
Not since I've been here, and I've been here since '09. Now, maybe you all,
No district, I don't know.
Oh.
It's clever, but it's not. Those are words of art.
I disagree. But we'll have that conversation. Maybe there's contract language.
Somewhere in this contract,
Probably proud.
But I mean, to your point, you're so glad to have teachers that they have to do something.
Statistically, look at the numbers, it's very tiny percentage.
And at one particular school site, the site administrator is saying that there's 6 teachers that do not fit one. The elementary school, it's not that big. It seems comparatively to the school staff that it is larger than the staffing plan provides. So that's why, again, we formally request the staffing plans for all the school sites.
formally received.
And date certain.
Again, well, how many teachers? 2,000 what?
2,100, Angie, or is it
So you got
2180?
Total.
She goes, I think it's like 2182.
Total, I understand 6. 1 is a lot if your name's on it. 1's too many if your name's on it.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But total wise, the concern of this language that has passed is half our annual contract teachers will be let go. That was the fear. So we tried to build protection into that fear.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, we had a dozen and 20 teachers. We fought over this language forever and just didn't.
But we don't want to plan about it.
No, we just.
You just want it.
Discuss it.
Right.
But we're not gonna let words like non-renewal is a production.
Yeah, that's not. But I mean, this has been such great dialogue, but we want you all to carefully look through those and give us your feedback. I don't have it before me. When's our next time? The 19th. But I knew that we would have to have discussions about this, and we formally want to make sure we're respectful of your time. And so we knew we would have this conversation, and then you all can come back and share your response. Is there anything else you all wanted to discuss today? We're within our time. I just want to make sure that we're being respectful of that. I know that we have a conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, yeah.
You know,
So
Yeah.
we end now, gives everyone a chance to leave.
Yeah. So we're finished for today. Thank you, everyone.